Levan Saginashvili.
Levan Saginashvili.
Levan Saginashvili is perhaps one of the most dominant athletes of today and is riding an ever-growing wave of social media as well as mainstream coverage. Often touted as one of the strongest people on the planet, how does this man do it? And maybe more importantly, how long can he sustain this? In order to answer these questions, it might help to look at who Mr. Saginashvili once was. Yes, you might find it hard to believe, but once upon a time, this hulking Georgian actually looked like a normal human child. Born in 1998 near Tbilisi, Georgia, the young Levan was interested in pursuing his favorite sport, and, like many a young Georgian lad at the time, spent a lot of his free time playing soccer. He was a self-described lanky teen, tall in stature but relatively skinny, who found out at the age of 16 that he could no longer play soccer because of health issues. Wanting to still pursue any athletic discipline he could, he eventually found himself a regular visitor at a gym that, by chance, opened in his apartment building. It was there where he first met Levan Saginashvili, a local arm wrestling coach, who immediately saw great potential in the young Levan. By 2010, Levan, now in his early 20s, was more dedicated than he'd ever been to any athletic endeavor before and was making great strides in his arm wrestling techniques. He would start competing with the national team and make waves on a local and European level soon after. By this time, it was clear by Levan's sheer appearance that the man was entering new stratospheres and would soon outpace every single one of his peers. Speaking about peers, Levan's biggest competition locally was the talented Genadi Kvikvinia. Genadi already had a significant amount of experience over Levan, and as a result, won most of their matchups early on in Levan's career. Year by year though, Levan would become stronger and eventually took over the Georgian arm wrestling crown from Genadi. When Levan showed up at the 2014 WAF Worlds and took home gold in the super heavyweight division, he had already put on a substantial amount of mass and quickly showed the arm wrestling world he was becoming a serious issue for some of the top-ranked guys. His overall physique was clearly impressive, but every subsequent year, as he consistently did well on a world level, he seemed to grow ever larger, until the man barely looked like the same species of great ape, let alone the same person as he was before. Levan can now, and does so regularly, boast about the fact that he hasn't been pinned, and by extension, hasn't dropped a round since 2017 in arm wrestling. And while you could argue he lost 2 rounds to Ermis Gasparini at King of the Table, something Levan himself willingly admits, his record makes him the undisputed best arm wrestler on the planet right now. It's gotten to a point where I personally go into any Levan match presupposing an easy win for the Georgian Hulk, and I know many onlookers share that same perspective. The man seems to have truly reached the pinnacle of arm wrestling, and as a consequence of that, stands high above all other competitors in the sport. A coveted place to be, no doubt, but a stressful one, for sure. He does forego competing at tournaments like he did before completely, choosing to only participate in super matches. There are probably multiple reasons for the shift in his competitive arm wrestling career. Super matches have quickly taken over tournaments as some of the most popular and by extension profitable ways of competing. The amount of time one can take in the preparation for a super match, and the fact that endurance on any given day wasn't as big of a factor, must have also made super matches much more appealing to Levan, as a frame like his can be easy or in fact healthy to maintain year-round for multiple tournaments. It made much more sense for the Georgian Hulk to focus on a couple super matches a year and thereby ensure he was always at the top of his game. Looking back further, you don't even have to be an arm historian to draw parallels between Levan and another Eastern arm wrestler who dominated the scene for a while. Some would even argue that Denis Siplenkov was Levan's direct predecessor at the top of the sport. Denis maintained an arguably unrealistic physique for prolonged periods of time too, in order to hold on to his position, and we all know how that turned out. Something I wouldn't wish on any athlete, of course, Levan included. But being at the top, like mentioned before, must certainly be quite a stressful situation for the still relatively young Levan. The higher you rise, the larger the potential plummet to the bottom, and if you're at a point in your career where dropping even one round will shatter the image you have so carefully cultivated over the years, the pressure to perform must feel at times insurmountable, and potentially even too much to bear by the broad shoulders of the Georgian Hulk. And until lab results show me otherwise, Levan is after all only human. All these things, paired with a culture that seemingly somewhat glorifies strength and self-sacrifice, must validate the price Levan is seemingly willing to pay for his greatness in his own mind. Talking about that price, Levan currently walks around somewhere between 170 to 190 kilograms, depending on where he is in his preparation cycle. A substantial amount of body weight for any human to carry that undoubtedly not only has an effect on the Georgian's joints, but must also wreak some havoc on the man's internal organs. It also must have some effect on his ability to get around in day-to-day life, and has at some level also clearly influenced his performance on the table, as evidenced by his infamous bout with Hermes Gasparini, where he had to be oxygenated as a result of overexertion. Now don't get me wrong, Levan carries this body weight surprisingly well, and despite it, is still quite dynamic on the table, but I don't think it's exactly increasing his lifespan, or his professional arm wrestling career for that matter. Now, a lot of you will, probably rightly so, point at the unattainability of this sort of body and power as a proof for Levan taking a copious amount of performance-enhancing drugs. Indeed, although he barely speaks out on this topic, Saginashvili himself has come out before as being a supporter of some of these substances. In one particular instance even speaking out about SARMs, in a now deleted video casually recommending it to his many viewers.
ასე ვთქვათ, გირჩიოთ ეს პროდუქცია, მე თუნდაც ვიყენებ და კმაყოფილი ვარ და მეგონი მეთქობა კიდევაც.
SARMs, of course, are still notoriously unstudied and unregulated, but have some links to serious adverse effects on internal organs, amongst other potential health issues. There's also former collaborators and people in the content creation game discussing his stack and the potential health scares that would come along with it.
You see this guy go from 190 to 350 in the course of 3 years. It's unbelievable. He ate himself.
Out of using steroids, right, and pursuing any sport where they feel they have to use steroids for, strongman, powerlifting, bodybuilding, for example, arm wrestling even, they're enormous. They're on the top arm wrestler right now. You would die if I told you what he's using.
On more than a couple occasions, Levan has also seemingly been fine with promoting pseudoscientific health fads, although these instances are arguably way less directly harmful to his own body. Apart from the chemicals, self-admittedly introduced to Levan's body, a big factor in his success in the sport undoubtedly also lies with his training. In a Brian Shaw podcast, he spoke out about the fact that he listens to his body and tries not to push it beyond its limits. Despite this, his focus on superhuman lifts, going into crazy high numbers, has led in some cases to serious bodily injury. Again, a price Levan seems very willing to pay. As mentioned before, Levan's native Georgia seems to idolize strength athletes to a degree, something that's honestly quite refreshing to see. Because of his many accomplishments within the arm wrestling world and beyond, Levan appeared on a number of local variety and talk shows, and quite honestly, pulled it off well, in my opinion. He's also appeared in a number of feature films, with perhaps one of his most noteworthy appearances being in the historical drama The Lady of Heaven, a movie about the origins of Islam, written by a prominent yet somewhat controversial person in the faith. In the movie, Levan portrays what looks to be a warlord named Tala the Ram. Also rubbing shoulders with major Hollywood actors, Levan had a henchman role in the action movie Extraction 2. Listen, I admire Levan's dedication to and clear passion for the sport of arm wrestling. He's a soft-spoken, respectful warrior who lets his arms do most of the talking on the table, and in many ways represents things to aspire to as an arm wrestler and a human. The mentality of victory at any cost is something that doesn't always sit well with me though, especially since sometimes that cost is serious injury, health issues, or in some cases, even worse. Now don't get me wrong, I'm pretty outspoken about the value of bodily autonomy, and Levan should be able to do with his body whatever he damn pleases. Mr. Saginashvili, although an extreme case, is certainly also not unique in this regard, and I don't mean for this video to come off as some kind of hit piece on the man himself. Many other arm wrestling athletes, elite or not, seem to be more than fine with pushing their body beyond their limits through the use of PEDs and extreme lifts, and are also believers and promoters of some pretty suspect health fads. Irrespective if it damages one individual's health though, we should take caution in what kind of standards we want to encourage as the ideal of a professional arm wrestler, and as an extension, how we are perceived by the outsider looking into our sport. After all, and I really believe this, within the outsiders lies the future of our sport, and solidifying the idea that you need to, in a way, abuse your body to reach the highest stratospheres of arm wrestling might not be the best way to encourage someone new to try and get into our beloved sport. Thank you for watching The Arm Historian. Drop a like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content and want to see more in the future. Also, give me your opinion on this topic in the comments. I'd love to discuss it further. Arm Historian, out.